Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening from. Welcome to the Change Management Simplified podcast, where we will explain and discuss what change management is really about, using real examples alongside principles of change management based on our experiences on projects, transformations, change initiatives, and of course, the home experiences as well.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Change Management Simplified podcast. I do apologize for my weird sounding voice today. I do have a bit of a cold. It's been a tough, rough, long week. So please do bear with my voice. It's not the usual normal voice that you usually do hear, but it is me, Rachel, and today is episode 25. That's 025. And it is part 2 of the Successful and Effective Leaders Value Change Management episode. The previous episode, part 1, we focused on, I focused on the leaders that inspired and triggered change management without them knowing while I was working with them. But they did something in regards to change management, either through strategic communication or inspired me through via stakeholder management, how you really do, work with the various stakeholders and ensuring that each stakeholder is treated equally and also respected, and no one is better than the other. Every single person that is impacted, which is a stakeholder, is as important as the other, regardless of what level in the organization. So long as they're impacted, they have to be listened to, respected, and treated the same, because their feedback is important, but it's important that they adopt the change. Otherwise, as an organization, it's a waste of time if the change is not adopted. Part 2, today's episode, is focusing on the leaders, the sponsors, change sponsors, or the change initiative sponsors, or the project sponsors who I have worked with directly as either project manager, program manager, or a change manager stroke practitioner, who have, what can I say, they have embraced change management as core or to the core of the project, which to me has made my life as a change practitioner much easier, because at the end of the day, it's the leadership sets the tone of how we would run the organization, or even at home. It's the parents to set the tone in a home. If it's one of those homes, let's just say there's a lot of swearing at home and everything else, you don't expect anything else different when they go out in the working environment, or even at school if they start swearing at a very early age, or just constantly swearing around, their friends. However, don't get me wrong, kids do also do pick up bad habits from outside, from their friends, or from wherever they might be hanging out. However, in our household, you might do that outside, but you do not do it when you're inside, because we do not accept swearing in a household. So again, it's the leadership inside the home. How do you set that tone? So it's the same thing as in the workplace. How does the leadership set that tone, the culture of the organization, or the teamwork, the collaboration? And on a project, how does change management get embedded within the project, because it is one of those work streams that's constantly ignored and called upon last minute, to resurrect or to revive, to try and get some little bit of success, because they've left it too late, and that's because the leaders didn't think change management was of any value. Today, I'm focusing on leaders and giving them credit, the sponsors who I've worked with and have really embraced change management and have added value to it, and they've made it more valuable, given it more awareness in the organization, to the point that the other projects recognized that they needed a change practitioner on their projects. And for that, I'd like to give my thank you and credit to these individual leaders. So here we go.
James Lenton. He is now also the group CFO for Burkler. Now, James has got excellent delivery. Message, he's always clear about the vision, clear about the message that he wants to get across. If I wanted to raise the awareness, of the change initiative, I'm facing some change resistance from the BAU teams. James was always there, ready to give that message as often as possible. But I just needed his power and influence for him to try and engage his direct reports to try and work with me better. The other thing that I also appreciate James that did was he always acknowledged and respected the project team. He was always present for the project team. That is very rare in most cases with some senior stakeholders or sponsors. They hide away, they sit in their offices and don't, get to spend time with the project team. The project team is usually ignored, and, most people think they should only just focus on the impacted stakeholders. However, the project team is also part of the impacted stakeholder group, but also you need them to deliver the project. And James, to me, was always present when I said, could you come and talk to the project team just to give us a lift? It's been tense and it will be great to hear your voice and also your thoughts and whatever you want to say. He was always present. If he, when we had team dinners, he would, once in a while he would come, he would stay around. What I liked about him, he tried not to sit next to the transformation lead. He would try and sit with anyone else that he doesn't see very often, which was encouraging because other people got to speak to him and also share some of, the experiences on the project. But he was also very clever enough for him to leave the dinner before people got too drunk to start asking for pay rises. Now, that's James. The second person is Mike Heap, or Michael Heap as well. He's the CFO as well now. He's the most visionary, laid back person. However, he has a way of making, or getting his team to perform the best to their abilities. He's the most approachable person. You get these leaders who think they should shout and bark and march around the floor to try and show that they're in charge of something. Mike Heap is not that type of person. He will sit with the team, work with them. If you need him, he's there. What he always did is present the problem to me. This is the problem I have, Rachel. Help me fix it. But if you need me, I'm here. And he's always been there. He also learned the power or the art of delegation and empowerment of his team. He empowered me to go drive the change management activities, drive the project management activities. And to me, if you want to get the best out of me, just give me the problem, let me do my job. If I get stuck, I'll come back. Do not tame me. I don't like people taming me. I don't like people micromanaging me. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. And if I'm not doing my job, feel free to fire me. Most leaders, especially new leaders, get that very wrong. They feel like they have to micromanage everything, but that really tames people. It restricts people, especially those who are experienced individuals. Leave them to do what they need to do. They will come to you when they have a problem, or just check in every once in a while. Is everyone okay? Do we have open questions rather than just micromanaging? And I appreciate such leaders. The other person who probably never actually realized this as well is Samuel Stevens. Now, when I started to talk about change management and operating model, you will always find that I always include the controls as a separate component. I have 4 components in the target operating model aspect, or when I'm thinking about change or a change strategy. One, what is the change initiative? Is it impacting the processes, controls, people, um, and of course the organization structure? you will find that most people don't have the controls as a component. However, some demonstrated to me that controls will always be a subcomponent of a target operating model or a change initiative, because if you change a system or if you change a process, there will be changes to controls and to handshakes. So always have it as a component as itself. We were implementing a new system, and of course we needed to leverage off the knowledge from his team, the controls head. He was head of controls at that time. um, he he laid out the strategy for us from a controls perspective, but what he also did, what I appreciated, was from a change management perspective, he always came in and said, I don't know what you guys are really, what the overall objective of this and how you currently operate. Talk me through what you guys do. What he actually was saying was, let me understand, allow me to understand how you're currently working and how you've set up your database, and understand the end-to-end data flow. And of course, the different configurations, manual or Excel-based formulas. Let me understand all that. That gave him an opportunity to take a step back and actually see the vision, what we're working on, and also the vision, but also then how his team needs to come in and leverage what we're doing, but also guide us on what type of controls we needed to ensure that we embedded within the process. That I've always appreciated, and I've always carried that to all the projects that I do in change management now, that we always have a controls aspect side of it. Some people always get confused now. Why are you talking about controls? I'm like, well, you can't change a process without considering controls. They can be automatic controls, they could be manual controls. So you always have to revisit your controls, whatever if you're changing something, because it has a knock-on impact on something, either on the person who does it or how it's done. So you always have to consider controls within the change management aspect of it. And that's where the value of Sam's influence on controls on one of the previous projects that I worked on to this date has an impact on how I look at certain things. The other person I would like to also credit is Matthias Grass, who is the CFO for Swiss Re Corporate Solution. Now, one thing I'm going to say about Matthias is he never stopped saying thank you, but he says these random thank yous, not just to me, but to anyone working on the project, because some people feel like this, the senior leaders are so distant from what's happening. They don't understand it. They just see the outputs when we're presenting him. But there's a way he made you or made the team feel. I see what you're doing. I see the effort that you're putting in. I see the sleepless nights that you're doing. And I say thank you. I'm grateful for all of you being loyal and working towards this, this tough timelines and tough deliverables. That made the project team, I don't think he realized this, but that made the project team feel like he was grateful. We didn't get it very often from some other leaders, but we're coming from Matthias, who was the CFO, made actually people feel much more appreciated. And also the other thing that he does, for me, from a change management perspective, when it comes to any discussions around changing processes, target operating models, of course, me and my boss, we would do the groundwork, put up our arguments, counter arguments where it didn't make sense, from those who were proposing suggestions from group. And, we'll get to a point where they're not listening to us anymore because they want to push through a vision, but that vision currently doesn't work at this point in time. We get it, but it's not going to quite work at this point in time. And when we always presented it back to Matthias, but oh yes, of course you have to justify why it doesn't work versus what's being proposed. But once he understand and got the concept of what we were trying to counter, he always backed us. He's a leader that will always back his people. And this is a strength, but also a key component of good leadership, and also having people who would work for you because you back them. The worst thing that I personally would hate is work for a leader. And when we go to a tough meeting with another team where we're trying to push for something, they throw me under the bus or they don't back me. I feel like, okay, so if we're going to get into those meetings and you're not going to back me, what's the point of me actually spending time talking you through what the pros and cons are and how it wouldn't work for us? And then you just throw me under the bus and be slaughtered, by these individuals. First, I feel like it portrays that I don't know what I'm talking about, and yet we've spoken about it and we aligned and you agreed to it. Um, and now you don't back me anymore, you know? So, and then to me, that breaks trust. But with Matthias, I'll be more than happy to work with Matthias because he will back you if it makes sense after a lot of interrogation for good reason. The other leader that I'm going to give credit to as well is Andreas Burkler. He's the most introvert leader, but excellent at getting the best out of his team. He drove he drove excellent collaboration cross-functionally and delegated accordingly. In the project where it's really complex, really tense, loads of subcomponents, and you've got a lot of meetings to go to, a lot of wars. When I say wars, political wars or requirement wars, and it's back and forth. You need to learn the art of delegation and trust or onboard individuals that you entrust to work on different things. But of course, he was always present when we needed him to say, "We've done this. Now we need your backup. We need sign off. We're going into this meeting." He was always there. The other thing is, he's a people person, very approachable, and anyone would want to work for Andy because you feel like he gives so much and he's there present so much and supports you that you feel like you can give more to him below you can put in the hours and don't feel like, you know what, I'm just working. He was there with you as well. The one thing that I'm going to that I'm thinking of and smiling now, and with a recent conversation that I had with him, um, in the role that he's in now, and there's some change happening there. And he's made a statement that resonated with me but made me feel proud. He said, we have to incorporate change management because at the end of the day, we have to take these people on the journey if we're changing something. If you don't take them on the journey, then you're not going to get the success that you need at the end of it. Andy, I salute you. And right now, I feel very proud, one of myself, because I'm thinking this is one of the senior leaders reciting change management. Um, but I feel like, yes, I did my job, and at least I've influenced more one of the leaders, what kind of value change management can bring. But also, if you're gonna push for a change, make it people centric, especially if you're providing a service or a product or need people to produce that service or product, then you're going to have to put people at the heart of that change, meaning you have to take them on the change journey. I talked about this in episode 2021, where you need to take the employees on a change journey using the John Fisher transition curve. But also this takes us back to the first trigger, one of my trigger points from Andreas Berger, who said, people at the heart of the change. So we have to keep people in mind when we're pushing through changes. The other leader that I would like to give credit to is Valentin Alvarez. Valentin made me appreciate that walking the impacted stakeholder journey bears fruit at the end. He's one of the most interesting and challenging stakeholders, however, challenging in a good way that when we were trying to get through a change on the target operating model, he made me spend more time or put more effort in me, one, understanding why the target operating model was being proposed, but what was the impact on the current operating model. I had to get alignment from him. However, I had to walk this journey with him and understand and listen to his concerns, to his points, then for me to be able to count and say, but if this is happening, what about this and this and that? So we had open, firm, sometimes tense discussions, but they were for the better good. And I understood where he was coming from. He also understood where I was coming from. But at the end of the day, we were aligned and went into the target operating model meetings aligned. And he always backed me when I put suggestions forward for how our teams had to work or where we're working and why we were working a certain way and why the new way potentially could not be as effective as it is, but also how much disruption it was going to cause at this point in time. And on that note, Valentin, thank you for working with me on that. It was a pleasure, but it was also a lot of learning for me as well. Um, but this also highlights to the point that to me, each stakeholder is different. So I have to work with them very differently. I always have to take a step back and see how does this stakeholder like to work so that I'm precise with what I do with them. The other leader that has been successful and has been effective as well and values change management. This is Salvatore. Sal is, he joined at the right time for me on my project. We were at the transition stage where people were critical at this point. Transition to me starts very early on in the very beginning from the business readiness perspective, from scoping, testing, all the way to the very back end of the project where people might start to say, oh, we need to start prepare for transition. I always start earlier than that. Reason being that it has to be gradual. It can't be drastic and expect people to just pick up and start using a certain tool straight away. So you have to build that gradual knowledge transfer. But also, what Sal did very well was help me with the people agenda side of it, people's emotions. Because as we change and things are becoming a reality, the BAU team tend to be reactive to a lot of to issues. If something doesn't go well, this doesn't work, this doesn't do this. So we had so many issues that I had to pick up on one bucket and he had to pick up on the other bucket. But together, every morning we would wake up. First thing we did was actually say, okay, what scenarios do we have? What people gender issues do we have? What issues did we have? And to me, that's a person who appreciated the people aspect side of the transition phase, because leaders that do not respect that phase, believe me, end up having a lot of resistance from their stakeholders, from the BAU stakeholders that we're trying to hand over to. And at that point, you end up underestimating how much those individuals could actually make you successful or a failure. And in most cases, we've seen 50 to 75 projects fail at that stage because you've forgotten to gradually take these individuals or the impacted stakeholders on the journey just to get them on board to mitigate change resistance. So Sal, thank you. Please continue to do what you're doing. And I know it can be tough. It was tough for us, mentally draining with all these people issues, but we got through it, and I appreciate that. And that's the list. The final to the leaders that I didn't mention. I have worked with several of you, but I just picked up on points that really kind of resonated with me at this point in time. But when overall, to summarize, when you look at if you listen to what I've been saying, all these individuals, to me, working with them, had one thing in common. They were all visionary, or sometimes some people might refer to them as transformational leaders. You know, it's easier to work with a transformational leader or visionary leader on a change initiative um, than an autocratic leader. Because the autocratic leaders usually what I say is what I do, and what I say is what goes, or what I say goes. And when it comes to change initiatives, that doesn't usually go down well, especially as I told you at the end of the project or during transition, because you're going to try and hand over a product or a system based on what you decided to configure, regardless of the feedback from the BAU teams, the impacted teams. You didn't consider it. You're going to hand over what you think was best for them. I can guarantee you none of them will sign off. And that would either dictate whether you keep your job in that company or you're fired straight away, or somehow pushed in the corner to do another role, sidelined, so that they bring in someone who can actually engage and get buy-in from the impacted stakeholder heads of function to try and get on board and make this project go live or this tool go live. Because at the end of the day, what's the point of investing time and money in a system that people are not going to end up using? So those with autocratic leadership, you need to get the balance right. Autocratically is fine, but to an extent. If you want people to use the tool, you need to get the balance right. So to make it successful as a change management leader, for me as in this role, I've had to tailor my working style to the different stakeholder, to each leader, because every single one of them is different. Yes, they do have a similar leadership style. However, as an individual or how they work is different. So I observe and see, okay, does this individual like? How do they like to work? How do they like to lay out the information? How do they like to be approached? This takes me back to the initial change trigger leaders. Okobaya told me is you need to understand your stakeholders. How do they work? What do they want? What do you need from them? What have you done? Then they're able to contribute and have a constructive discussion with you. The other common theme that I noticed that every single one of them applied effectively emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence is made up of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management throughout the leadership style. Now, if you want to know more about those components or emotional intelligence, you need to go to episode 5, where I introduced the topic of emotional intelligence, and then 4 episodes covering each components that I've named between episode 6 to 9. And please do let me know if you've got any more questions. I'm happy to discuss more, but I'm hoping that you can get a lot more from those episodes already, so I'm not going to cover that at all. And the other thing that I would like to say, they all let me do my job. No, none of them tamed me or tried to micromanage me. They gave me the problem statement. This is the problem. We're changing it. We have a change initiative. Do your change management. Do your change management activities, please. I did my job.
And on that note, thank you for listening. Hopefully you have at least learned from some of the examples that I've given, but also to give thanks to all these leaders who do value change management, who have actually highlighted and demonstrated that change management is valuable and can enable you to have success on the project or change initiative that you are implementing. And to all those leaders who do not think change management is of value to them, actually, on reflection, back in the Big Four days, change management used to be looked upon as, the team that were called or referred to as the tree huggers. However, if you give something some TLC, you will listen, they will listen, and they will adapt, and they will grow. So I used to think about it as, oh, that's not a very good thing to say. However, on reflection, now I'm in change management. It's okay. I'm happy to hug the tree and give it that, give it that TLC that it needs while I'm listening to its points, to its feedback, while it listens to my feedback and reasons why we're changing and allowing it to adapt to a new environment. And on that note, thank you all for listening. I do appreciate that you create time to come back and listen to me every week, and I do apologize. There's been a gap for 2 weeks, but it's just been a really tough week for me, for tough 2 weeks for me. So I wasn't able to release an episode last weekend. And yes, next week I will actually, as part of my disastrous week, I will be giving an short example of demonstration of a failed target operating model. And this has got to do with British Airways. They made my journey not so exciting. It was actually awful. So, but I am going to talk about it in a way that constructively, hopefully, gives BA British Airways, some constructive feedback for them to be able to adjust somewhere in their target operating model to ensure that this doesn't happen, because it impacted a lot of customers. And on that note, thank you for listening and see you next week. Thank you.
If you find this podcast beneficial or interesting, please press follow, like, or subscribe. Lastly, and of course, don't forget to spread the word by sharing. Thank you for listening.